The transport ship shook as it docked with the massive flagship. Kang Doyen pressed his face against the small window, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. Smoke still rose from what used to be Seoul. 3 weeks ago, he had been teaching history to university students. Now he was a prisoner of the Galactic Dominion, and Earth belonged to aliens who called humans a minor species. The holding cell was crowded. 40 people crammed into a space meant for 20. Doyen sat in the corner, his glasses cracked from when the soldiers had thrown him against a wall. Next to him, a woman with short black hair and hard eyes stared at the door. Her name was Park Hyerin. She had been a soldier before the conquest. "They're taking people for questioning," Hyerin whispered. 5 so far. None came back. Doyen nodded but said nothing. What could he say? Earth had fallen in 21 days. The defense fleet was destroyed, the armies were scattered. Humanity's proud history of warfare meant nothing against weapons that could burn cities from orbit. The door hissed open. 2 alien guards entered, their scales black as oil, their forearms carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Behind them walked something else, something bigger. Warlord Krevnar the Unbreakable stood 3 meters tall. His scales were darker than his soldiers, marked with scars from 1,000 battles. 4 arms, each as thick as a tree trunk, eyes like yellow fire. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like thunder. "The human who teaches history. Bring him." Guards grabbed Doyen and dragged him out. Hyerin started to move, but other prisoners held her back. Fighting now would only get them killed. They took Doyen through corridors of metal and strange lights. Other humans worked here, their faces empty, their backs bent. Labor crews. This was humanity's future, the Warlord's officers had said. Work until you die. The Warlord's chamber was huge. Trophies lined the walls. Weapons from 100 conquered worlds. Banners, skulls. And in the center, on a massive table, books. Earth books, human books. Doyen recognized them immediately. Military histories, strategy texts, accounts of human wars spanning thousands of years. Krevnar sat behind the table, one massive hand holding a book carefully. Too carefully, like it might break. "You are Professor Kang Doyen. You taught human military history?" "Yes." "Good. Then you can explain this to me." The Warlord held up the book. It was a history of World War II. "I have been reading your species' records. I wanted to understand what kind of warriors I had conquered." Doyen said nothing. Krevnar opened the book. "Your people fought a war that killed 60 million of your own kind. Over what? Territory? Resources?" He laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "No. Over ideas, over lines on maps, over who had the right to rule." His officers, standing around the room, laughed too. "You burned your own cities," Krevnar continued. "You created weapons to kill millions at once. You fought in deserts, jungles, frozen wastes. You killed each other with such dedication, such creativity." He closed the book. "And yet, when we came, you fell in 3 weeks. How?" Doyen met the Warlord's eyes. "Because you attacked from space. Because your technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Because we never fought an enemy like you." "Exactly." Krevnar stood walking around the table. "Your species wastes its genius on fighting itself. Chaotic, barbaric, undisciplined." He picked up another book. Vietnam. Another. The Mongol conquests. These are not histories of a civilized species. These are records of savagery. But Doyen noticed something. The Warlord was not just mocking. He was reading carefully, taking notes, studying. "Why are you really reading those?" Doyen asked. Krevnar tilted his head. "Because I catalog the culture of conquered species. It helps me understand how to control them." "No," Doyen said quietly. "You're studying our tactics, our strategies. You're trying to understand how we fight." Silence filled the room. The officers stopped laughing. Krevnar stepped closer. careful, human. I allow you to live because you amuse me. That can change. I'm right, though, Doyen said. You've conquered hundreds of species, but you've never seen anything like human warfare. We fight in ways that don't make sense to you. The warlord was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured to his guards. Return him to holding. I will call for him again. As they dragged Doyen away, he heard Krevnar speaking to his officers. Increase patrols in the human sections. They are more dangerous than we assumed. Back in the cell, Hieron grabbed Doyen's arm. What happened? The warlord is reading our military history. He thinks he's mocking us, but he's actually trying to understand us. Why does that matter? Because it means he's worried. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere in his mind he knows something is wrong. We fell too easily. He's trying to figure out why and what we might do next. Hieron's eyes brightened. Then we give him something to worry about. Over the next days, Doyen learned the ship's routine. Food came twice a day. Waste was removed once. Guards changed every 8 hours. The patterns were predictable. Military discipline, but also arrogance. The Dominion had never lost to a conquered species. Hieron organized the prisoners quietly. Lee Minho, a young man who had worked in Earth's embassy, remembered the ship's layout from before the conquest. Choi Yuna, a medic, treated injuries and learned which guards were cruel and which were merely indifferent. On the 5th day, Doyen was summoned again. This time, Krevnar seemed different. Still massive, still terrifying, but something in his posture had changed. I have finished reading your World War II, the warlord said. I have questions. Ask. Your species created weapons that could destroy cities in an instant. Atomic bombs, nuclear weapons. Why did you not use them more? You had the power to eliminate your enemies completely. Doyen thought carefully. Because we understood that some victories are not worth the cost. Because total destruction leaves nothing to rule. Because even in war we knew there had to be limits. Krevnar's eyes narrowed. That is weakness. Is it? You conquered Earth. You have our cities, our resources, our people. But if you had destroyed everything, what would you have gained? Ash? I would have gained an example. Other species would fear us more. Perhaps. But you would also lose what you came for. Workers, soldiers, tribute. You cannot collect taxes from the dead. The warlord sat back. You speak like a warrior, not a teacher. I taught military history for 15 years. I learned that war is not just about killing, it's about achieving goals. And sometimes restraint is stronger than force. Krevnar was quiet. Then he stood. I am sending 10,000 humans to labor colonies tomorrow. You will not be among them. I find our conversations valuable. As Doyen was led away, he felt ice in his stomach. 10,000 people. Families separated. Lives destroyed. And he was being spared because he was useful. That night, Hieron told him the plan. We're going to sabotage the fuel depot on level 7. Minho found the access codes. We can do real damage. They'll kill people in response, Doyen warned. They're already killing people. At least this way, we die fighting. Doyen looked around the cell. Tired faces, angry faces, scared faces, but not defeated faces. Do it, he said. 2 days later, the explosion rocked the ship. 40 alien soldiers died. Alarms screamed through every corridor. The warlord called Doyen immediately. Did you know about this attack? Krevnar's voice was pure rage. Doyen stood straight. I'm a prisoner in a cell. What do you think? I think humans are more dangerous than they appear. I think you have been teaching me about your warfare for a reason. You wanted to understand us, Doyen said calmly. Congratulations. Now you do. We're human. Did you really think we would just accept slavery? The warlord's hands clenched. I will execute 100 prisoners for this. Then you'll have more attacks. Kill 1,000, you'll have a rebellion. That's what the history books teach. Every occupation of Earth has failed. Every single one. Krevnar stepped close, his breath hot. This is not Earth. This is my ship, my domain. I am unbreakable. Doyen met his eyes. So was everyone else who conquered us. Ask them how it ended. The warlord raised one massive hand. For a moment, Doyen was certain he would die. But then Krevenar lowered his hand. Return him. Double the guards. Increase interrogations. I will break this resistance. As Doyen walked back to his cell, he allowed himself a small smile. The warlord was angry. Good. Angry enemies make mistakes, and mistakes could be exploited. In the cell, Hieron was waiting. They're announcing public executions tomorrow. Resistance fighters. I'm on the list. Doyen's smile vanished. The war was just beginning, and already the cost was higher than he imagined. 2 months had passed since Earth fell. Doyen stood in the warlord's chamber again, but this time the visits had become routine. 3 times a week, Krevenar summoned him to discuss human military history. The alien believed he was studying a defeated enemy. Doyen knew better. He was planting seeds. Explain guerrilla warfare, Krevenar commanded, holding up a book about the Vietnam War. Doyen chose his words carefully. It's warfare by the weak against the strong. Small attacks. Hit and run. Never give the enemy a clear target. Make occupation so expensive, so exhausting that eventually they give up. Cowardly tactics. Effective tactics. The strongest military in human history lost to farmers with simple weapons. Why? Because the farmers understood something important. You don't have to win battles. You just have to refuse to lose. The warlord's second-in-command overseer Thrak spoke up. This is why their species is weak. They celebrate losing. We don't celebrate losing, Doyen corrected. We celebrate surviving. There's a difference. Krevenar leaned forward. But you did lose. We conquered your world in 3 weeks. Your fleets are destroyed. Your armies are scattered. What good are these tactics now? Doyen met his eyes. That depends. Do you think you've won? I know I have won. Then why do you keep reading those books? Silence. Thrak shifted uncomfortably. Krevenar's voice dropped to a growl. Return to your cell. In the holding area, things had changed. The initial 40 prisoners had been moved to different sections. Doyen now shared space with 30 others, including Hieron. She had survived her execution date. The warlord had spared the resistance fighters at the last moment. Doyen had negotiated for their lives by promising to continue his lessons. But the resistance had not stopped. A new member had joined their planning. Kim Ji-won had been an intelligence officer before the conquest. Thin, quiet, with eyes that never stopped calculating, she worked in the ship's maintenance crew during the day and spent nights accessing computer systems through damaged panels. I'm in their network, Ji-won whispered, during a food distribution. Basic access only, but it's enough. I can send messages to other prisoner sections. How many other ships have human prisoners? Hieron asked. 12 ships in this fleet alone. Maybe 3,000 humans total. Can you reach them all? Give me time. Also among the prisoners was Baek Tae-hyung, a veteran of Earth's last war. Gray hair, scarred face, hard as stone. He had fought in conflicts Doyen only taught about. Now he trained other prisoners in hand-to-hand combat, disguising it as exercise. The guards are getting nervous, Tae-hyung told them. They think we're just workers, but they're starting to realize prisoners are watching them. Learning their patterns. Good, Hieron said. Let them be nervous. The next attack came 4 days later. Hieron's team, now calling themselves the Ashes, struck a supply convoy moving through the lower decks. They used improvised weapons, crude knives, stolen tools. 3 alien soldiers died. The humans took their weapons and disappeared into the maintenance tunnels. The response was immediate and brutal. Guards flooded the prisoner sections. Random beatings. Reduced food. Threats of execution. But something had changed. The prisoners didn't break. They endured. Krevenar summoned Doyen the day after the attack. The warlord was furious. You knew about this. I'm locked in a cell 20 hours a day. How would I know? You are teaching them through me. You explain tactics and they use them. Doyen kept his voice level. You asked me to explain human warfare. I did. It's not my fault your security is weak. Krevenar's forearms flexed. I should kill you now. Then you'll never understand why this keeps happening. You'll keep losing soldiers. Keep losing equipment. Keep wondering why humans won't behave like every other conquered species. The warlord stared at him for a long moment. What makes you different? We remember, Doyen said simply. Every defeat. Every occupation. Every conqueror who thought they'd won. We write it all down. We teach it to our children. We learn from it. And we never ever forget that no occupation lasts forever. Optimistic words from a slave. I'm not a slave. I'm a prisoner of war. There's a difference. Thrak stepped forward. Warlord, this human is dangerous. His words poison your thoughts. End this now, but Krevnar waved him away. No, I want to understand. If I understand, I can break them. He looked at Doyun. Tell me about insurgency. Tell me how to stop it, Doyun almost smiled. The warlord was asking the wrong question, but he answered anyway. You can't stop insurgency with force alone. The more you crack down, the more people resist. The more people you kill, the more martyrs you create. Insurgency feeds on oppression. Then what stops it? Hope. Give people hope that things will improve. Give them a reason to stop fighting. Or, Doyun paused, you completely destroy the population. Kill everyone. Leave no one alive to resist. Krevnar was quiet. The second option is simpler. Is it? You need workers. You need tribute. Dead populations provide neither. And killing everyone on Earth would require resources you don't have. Plus, it would inspire every other conquered species to fight harder. They'd think if the Dominion does that to humans, we're next. The logic was clear. Krevnar could not wipe out humanity without damaging his own empire. You have thought about this deeply, the warlord observed. I taught military history. Understanding occupation is part of that. And did your history show any successful occupations? A few. Rome for a while. The British Empire in some places. But they all ended the same way. Either the occupiers left or they were forced out. Krevnar's expression was unreadable. Return to your cell. We will speak again. That night, Jiwon brought news. I've made contact with prisoners on 8 other ships. They're ready to coordinate. Coordinate what? Taehyung asked. Attacks. All at once. Make the Dominion think resistance is everywhere. That's suicide, someone said. Sitting here waiting to die is also suicide, Hyerin countered. At least this way we die with teeth bared. Doyun listened to them plan. Explosives here, sabotage there. Communications disrupted, fuel supplies destroyed. It was ambitious. Probably impossible. But humans had done impossible things before. On Earth, reports were filtering through despite the Dominion's censorship. Shin Hana, a former corporate security chief, had organized guerrilla cells in the ruins of major cities. A teenage genius named Yoon Seok was building weapons from salvaged technology. The occupation forces on the planet were facing daily attacks. The Dominion had expected compliance. They got war. 3 weeks later, the coordinated attack happened. Across 12 ships, human prisoners struck simultaneously. Explosives in fuel bays, viruses in navigation systems, hand-to-hand combat in corridors. It lasted less than an hour, but the damage was significant. 5 Dominion ships had to dock for emergency repairs. 2 lost navigation and drifted. Hundreds of alien soldiers died. And for the first time in 200 years, the Galactic Dominion suffered military losses to a conquered species. Krevnar called Doyun to his chamber immediately. The warlord's fury was like a physical force. You knew. You planned this. I'm one man in a cell. This is bigger than me. You have been teaching them through our conversations. You wanted to understand human warfare. Congratulations, now you understand. Doyun stepped closer, unafraid. You read about guerrilla tactics, about insurgency, about how occupations fail. Did you think those were just stories? Did you think humans would read those histories and not learn from them? You will all die for this. Maybe, but you'll die too eventually. And when you do, when the Dominion falls, humans will write about you. We'll put you in our history books. Just another conqueror who thought he could break us. Just another name in a long list of failures. Krevnar's hand shot out and grabbed Doyun by the throat, lifting him off the ground. I am Krevnar the Unbreakable. I have conquered 60 worlds. I do not fail. Doyun gasped but managed to speak. Then why are you so angry? The warlord's eyes widened. Then he threw Doyun to the ground. Get out. Get out before I kill you. Guards dragged Doyun back to the cell. Hyerin checked him for injuries. What happened? I think, Doyun said, rubbing his throat. I think the warlord is starting to understand that he made a mistake. What mistake? Conquering humanity. Word came 2 days later. The Dominion's Supreme Commander, Admiral Vorketh, had issued new orders. All human prisoners were to be executed as an example. Every ship, every prisoner, no exceptions. The execution date was set for 1 week. In the cell, the prisoners were quiet. They had fought well. They had hurt the enemy, but now it was ending. Hiron looked at Doyen. Was it worth it? He thought about Earth, about the resistance still fighting, about every human who refused to kneel. Yes, he said. Yes, it was. But Krevnar had not given up on his conversations. The Warlord summoned Doyen one last time. They want me to kill all of you. I know. They say you are too dangerous to keep alive. They're right. Krevnar walked to his window, looking out at the stars. I have been reading more of your histories, about occupations, about resistance. You were right. They all end the same way. What are you saying? The Warlord turned. I am saying that I wonder if I have been asking the wrong questions. I tried to understand how to defeat you, but perhaps the real question is whether defeating you is possible. Doyen said nothing. The execution order is in 1 week. I cannot stop it, but I can delay it. If you tell me the truth, can humanity win this? Doyen met his eyes. I don't know, but I know we won't stop trying. Krevnar nodded slowly. That is what I feared. 4 months. 4 months since Earth fell and the planet was burning again. But this time the fires were set by human hands. In the ruins of Sol, Shin Hana crouched behind rubble, watching a Dominion patrol pass. 5 alien soldiers, heavy armor, energy weapons. They walked with confidence. They thought they owned this city. They were wrong. Hana signaled. 3 seconds later, the explosions ripped through the street. The patrol disappeared in fire and debris. Before the dust settled, her team was gone, melting into the ruined buildings like ghosts. Another successful hit, her second-in-command said. Mark it on the map. Make sure the other cells know this area is active. They had learned quickly. The Dominion controlled the cities during the day, but at night, Earth belonged to the Resistance. And every day, more humans joined the fight. Across the city in a hidden basement, Yoon Seok worked on his latest creation. At 17, he was younger than most of the fighters. But his mind was brilliant. He took Dominion technology, broke it down, understood it, and rebuilt it into weapons humans could use. This one is ready, he told Hana when she arrived. It's a virus, gets into their ship systems through any data connection, corrupts navigation, life support, everything. How do we deliver it? We already did. I uploaded it to 50 different access points across the city. Every time they connect a device to their network, it spreads. Hana smiled. You're a genius. I'm angry. That makes me focused. Up in orbit, aboard the flagship, Krevnar received the reports with growing concern. The resistance on Earth was not decreasing. It was growing. Every garrison attacked, every convoy ambushed, every patrol that went out lost soldiers, and the attacks on ships were continuing. Just yesterday, navigation systems on 5 vessels had crashed simultaneously. The ships had barely avoided colliding with planets, thousands of crew members dead. His superiors were demanding answers. Admiral Vorketh had sent an inquisitor to investigate. Zalmoth was due to arrive within days. Krevnar knew what that meant. Inquisitors only came when the Dominion suspected failure, or treason. He called for Doyen again. The human professor entered, thinner now after months of reduced rations, but his eyes were still sharp. You said insurgency feeds on oppression, Krevnar said without greeting. I have increased security, increased patrols, increased executions. Why does the resistance grow stronger? Because you're proving our point, Doyen said. Every execution creates martyrs. Every crackdown creates more anger. You're doing exactly what every failed occupier has done. Then tell me what would work. Nothing will work. That's what I've been trying to tell you. You cannot occupy Earth. It's never worked. Not for anyone. Krevnar's frustration was visible. Your species is insane. You fight wars you cannot win. We fight wars we cannot lose. There's a difference. We're not fighting to win, we're fighting to survive. And as long as one human remains who refuses to kneel, we haven't lost. The Warlord turned to look at his collection of Earth books. I have read 50 of your military histories now. Everyone shows the same pattern. Your species excels at warfare, not because you have better weapons, because you refuse to accept defeat. That's the first intelligent thing I've heard you say. Krevnar's eyes flashed. Do not test me, human. Inquisitor Zalmoth arrives in 3 days. If he finds evidence that I have been too lenient, he will have me executed, and then he will order your entire species exterminated. Doyen's expression didn't change. Then you better figure out how to explain why the mighty Dominion is losing to a conquered species. The Warlord was silent for a long moment. Then he said, There is something I need to know. The attacks across the fleet. They were coordinated. How did you communicate between ships? I didn't. Someone did. Humans communicate. We organize. We plan. That's what we do. Did you think keeping us in separate cells would stop that? Who organized it? Does it matter? Kill one organizer, another rises. That's how insurgency works. You cut off one head, 2 more grow back. Krevnar slammed one massive fist on the table. I am trying to find a solution that does not end with your extinction. That stopped Doyen. He stared at the Warlord. What? You heard me. Zalmoth will order the complete destruction of your species. Every human, every ship, every colony, your entire planet glassed. Nothing left but ash. Then why are you talking to me? Why not just let it happen? Krevnar met his eyes. Because I have spent 4 months reading your histories, studying your tactics, learning your culture, and I have realized something. Your species should not exist. You wage war on yourselves constantly. You create weapons of extinction. You fight over ideas and beliefs. By all logic, you should have destroyed yourselves millennia ago. But we didn't. No, you didn't. And I want to know why. What makes you survive when you should fail? Doyen thought carefully. We remember. We learn. We adapt. Every war teaches us something. Every defeat makes us stronger. We don't just survive. We evolve. That is not enough of an answer. It's the only answer I have. Before Krevnar could respond, alarms screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed. His officers rushed in. Warlord! The humans! They're rioting! Where? Everywhere. Every prison section, they're coordinated. Krevnar roared and ran from the chamber. Guards grabbed Doyen, but in the chaos they lost their grip. He ran in the opposite direction toward the prison sections. The corridors were chaos. Human prisoners fought with guards, improvised weapons against energy rifles. It was a slaughter. But the humans kept coming. Doyen found Hyren in the middle of the fighting. She had taken a weapon from a fallen guard and was firing with practiced precision. What's happening? He shouted. Shiwan's virus. It unlocked all the cell doors across 12 ships. We're making our move. This is suicide. Maybe, but we decided we'd rather die fighting than wait for execution. Around them, the battle raged. Taehyung led a group of prisoners against a fortified position. Jiwon worked at a terminal, trying to lock out the Dominion's command systems. Choi Yuna dragged wounded humans to safety while returning fire. It was heroic. It was desperate. It was very human, and it was working. Reports flooded in from other ships. Prisoners were seizing control of entire sections. Some ships had lost power. Others were evacuating due to fire. The coordinated uprising was crippling the fleet. Krevnar stood on his bridge, watching his empire crack. In 200 years, the Dominion had never faced anything like this. Conquered species stayed conquered. They obeyed. They served. But humans did not obey. His tactical officer reported, Warlord, we've lost control of sections 7 through 12. They've barricaded themselves in. We'll need to cut through, which could take days. What are our casualties? 800 dead. Twice that wounded, and it's still happening. Thurok approached. We must use overwhelming force. Gas the sections. Kill them all. If we do that, we damage the ship, and it won't stop the uprisings on other vessels. Then what do you propose? Krevnar had no answer. He had conquered 60 worlds. He had crushed 100 armies. He had never lost, until now. 3 days later, Inquisitor Zalmoth arrived. He was smaller than Krevnar, but carried himself with absolute authority. His scales were silver, marking him as high caste. His eyes missed nothing. Warlord Krevnar, I am here to investigate reports of failure. Failure? I have conquered Earth, I hold their planet and their people. Yet your fleet is crippled, your ships are in revolt. Your casualty reports show unprecedented losses. Salmoth's voice was cold. This does not look like conquest. This looks like defeat. These humans are unlike any species we have faced. That is an excuse, not an explanation. Krevnar straightened. Then let me explain. These beings wage war like it is worship. They have written thousands of texts on how to kill, how to survive, how to resist. We have conquered hundreds of species, but we have never conquered this. You sound almost respectful. I sound realistic. If we continue as we are, we will lose. Salmoth's eyes narrowed. The Dominion does not lose. Then the Dominion needs to change its tactics. Careful, Warlord. Those words sound like treason. Before Krevnar could respond, more alarms sounded. Hiron's team had reached the bridge level. They were fighting toward the command center. Zalmoth watched the security feeds. You cannot even control your own ship. You are relieved of command, effective immediately. He signaled his guards. Arrest him. As the guards moved forward, the doors exploded inward. Hiron and her team burst through, weapons firing. The guards went down. Prisoners flooded onto the bridge. In the chaos, Krevnar made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed Doyen and Hiron. This way, quickly! What are you doing? Doyen gasped. Something I should have done months ago. The Warlord led them to an escape bay. I am giving you a chance. Why? Krevnar looked at him. Because you were right. I read your history books. I learned about occupations and resistance, and I understand now. I am just another name that will be written there. Another conqueror who failed. But perhaps I do not have to end as they did. He opened the escape pods. Go, take as many as you can. I will hold them off. They'll kill you, Hiron said. Probably. But I have killed thousands in my lifetime. Perhaps it is time I saved a few. He pushed them toward the pods. Go, tell your people what happened here. Tell them that one warlord learned. As the pods launched, carrying dozens of human prisoners to safety, Krevnar turned back to face Zalmoth's guards. The Inquisitor's voice crackled over the comm. Krevnar, you are now guilty of treason. The warlord smiled, something he had not done in years. No, I am guilty of learning. Then he charged. 6 months? Half a year since Earth fell and the Galactic Dominion was bleeding. Krevnar stood in chains before the Dominion Council. His once proud armor was stripped away, his weapons confiscated, his rank dissolved, but his eyes remained defiant. You are accused of treason, the council speaker announced. You released enemy prisoners. You aided their escape. You attacked Inquisitor Zalmoth's guards. How do you answer these charges? Guilty, Krevnar said simply. Murmurs filled the chamber. You admit it? I admit I learned something the Dominion refuses to see. Humans cannot be conquered by force alone. Every attempt to crush them makes them stronger. That is the excuse of a failed commander. That is the observation of a warrior who studied his enemy. Krevnar's voice grew stronger. I spent 6 months reading human military history. I learned their tactics, their strategies, their nature, and I realized we made a fundamental error. And what error is that? We assumed they were like every other species. They are not. They have written thousands of years of warfare down in books. They study defeat. They learn from failure. They teach resistance to their children. We did not conquer warriors. We awakened them. The council was silent. The sentence is death. The speaker finally said, but first you will watch the extinction of humanity. You will see what your mercy has cost. They brought in holographic displays, showed him Earth. The Dominion's new fleet was gathering above the planet. 5,000 warships. Enough firepower to turn the entire surface into glass. Emperor Draxthar himself leads this fleet, the speaker said. He will arrive in 10 days. Then Earth burns. Every human city. Every settlement. Every last survivor. Nothing will remain but a warning to other species about the cost of resistance. Krevnar felt something he had not felt in decades. Not fear, not regret. Something else. Respect on Earth, Shinhana received the intelligence report from an unlikely source. A Dominion officer, disgusted by the Empire's brutality, had leaked the invasion plans. They had 10 days before the largest fleet in galactic history arrived to end humanity forever. She called an emergency meeting of all resistance cells. This is it, she told them. Everything we've fought for. Everything we've lost. It ends in 10 days. Can we win? Someone asked. No, not against 5,000 ships. We might destroy a few dozen, maybe 100 if we're lucky, but they'll burn the planet anyway. Then what do we do? Hana looked around the room. Tired faces, young and old, soldiers and civilians, all of them ready to die fighting. We make them remember us. We make them pay for every inch of Earth they take. We fight so hard that for the rest of galactic history, species will speak our name with respect. We lose. But we lose like humans. The room erupted in agreement. In orbit aboard one of the captured Dominion ships, Han Jisoo reviewed their options. The former astronaut had never expected to command a warship, but after escaping with Krevnar's help, she had led a team that seized a damaged Dominion vessel. They had repaired it, learned its systems, and now flew it against its former masters. We have 87 ships, her tactical officer reported, mix of captured Dominion vessels and human-built fighters. Against 5,000 will last about 10 minutes. Then we make those 10 minutes count. Other leaders were organizing too. Lee Minho coordinated diplomatic efforts, desperately trying to contact other species to help. Nasung men worked with freed prisoners, helping them overcome trauma and return to fight. Yoon Seok mass-produced weapons with whatever materials he could find. And Doyun wrote. He wrote down everything that had happened. The conquest. The resistance. The conversations with Krevnar. He wrote it so that if humanity died, at least their story would survive. He sent copies to every data cache he could access, loaded them on probes and launched them toward random coordinates in space. Future species will find these, he told Hyerin. They'll know what happened here. They'll know we fought. You really think we're going to lose? Against 5,000 ships? Yes, but maybe that's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is that we're still fighting. That matters. The Dominion held Krevnar in a cell, forcing him to watch reports from Earth. They wanted him to see the fruit of his treason. Instead, he saw something else. He saw humans building weapons from scrap. Saw them training children to fight. Saw cities preparing for siege. Saw people who knew they were going to die still refusing to surrender. It was insane. It was magnificent. They will all die because of you, Thrak said, visiting his cell. Your mercy saved a few hundred prisoners. Now billions will burn. They would have burned anyway. The Emperor planned this extinction months ago. Perhaps. But you gave them hope. That hope will make their end more painful. Krevnar looked at his former officer. You still do not understand. Hope is not what makes their end painful. Hope is what makes them dangerous. On the 8th day, something unexpected happened. 3 alien species sent small fleets to Earth, not to join the Dominion. To help humanity, they were minor species, weak races that the Dominion had conquered centuries ago. Their fleets combined added only 200 ships. But their arrival sent a message. We remember occupation, their leaders said. We remember resistance. If the Dominion can exterminate humans for fighting back, none of us are safe. We stand with Earth. It was not enough to win, but it was something. The Dominion Council was furious. Traitor species. They will be punished after Earth falls. But the speaker looked worried. This is spreading. The human resistance is inspiring others. Then we must make the example more severe. Burn Earth completely. Leave nothing. Not even bacteria. Emperor Draxthar arrived on the 9th day. His flagship, Eternal Dominion, was 3 kilometers long. Its weapons could destroy moons. Its armor had never been breached. He had ruled the Empire for 100 years and never lost a battle. He broadcast a message to Earth and all Dominion space. Humans, you have resisted occupation. You have killed Dominion soldiers. You have inspired rebellion among other species. For these crimes, you are sentenced to extinction. In 24 hours, your planet will be cleansed. There will be no mercy, no survivors. This is the price of defiance. On Earth, the response was not fear. It was rage. Hana stood on the ruins of a building in Seoul, looking up at the sky where 5,000 enemy ships waited. Around her, millions of humans prepared for the last battle. For Earth, she shouted. For Earth! The cry echoed across the planet. In his cell, Krevnar heard the broadcast. He knew what would happen next. The fleet would descend. Orbital bombardment would turn cities to ash. Ground forces would hunt survivors. Within a week, Earth would be a dead world. But then something else happened. Jisu's captured fleet, all 87 ships, charged directly at the Dominion Armada. It was suicide. They knew it. They did it anyway. And they were not alone. The 3 allied species fleets joined them. Human resistance fighters and improvised ships launched from Earth. Defense stations that everyone thought were destroyed came online, having been hidden and waiting. It was still hopeless. 400 ships against 5,000, but they attacked anyway. The battle began with the human fleet using tactics Krevnar had read about in those history books. Guerrilla warfare in space. Hit-and-run attacks. They did not try to fight fair. They used every dirty trick humanity had invented in 10,000 years of warfare. Ramming attacks. Kamikaze runs. Ships deliberately overloading their reactors to explode near enemy vessels. Viruses uploaded via tight beam communications. It was chaos. It was brutal. It was completely, insanely human. And it was working better than anyone expected. Hyunsuk's virus spread through the Dominion fleet like fire. Navigation systems crashed. Life support failed. Ships collided with each other in the confusion. The Emperor watched from his flagship as his armada fell apart. What is happening? The humans. They have corrupted our systems. We are losing ships. How many? 47 destroyed, 93 damaged. Hundreds more compromised by the virus. Draxthar could not believe it. Against 400 ships? They are not fighting like a fleet. They fight like... The officers struggled to find words. Like they have nothing to lose. Because they did not. Earth was already condemned, its people already dead, so they fought with the freedom of the doomed. In his cell, Krevnar watched the battle unfold. He saw tactics he had read about. The kamikaze attacks of humans World War II. The guerrilla strikes of Vietnam. The total war doctrine of their greatest conflicts. They were using everything. Every lesson. Every tactic. Every dirty trick from 10,000 years of human warfare. He started laughing. What is funny? The Rock demanded. I tried to warn you. I read their histories. I learned their nature. They do not fight to win. They fight to hurt you. They fight so that even in defeat they are remembered. They are being slaughtered. Yes, and they are taking hundreds of our ships with them. That is how humans lose. Expensively. The battle raged for hours. The human fleet was slowly destroyed. But every ship took enemies with it. Every fighter made their death count. On Earth, people watched the sky light up with explosions. They knew their defenders were dying. They prepared for the bombardment to begin. But it did not come. Because on the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Draxthar faced a choice. He had lost 300 ships. His fleet was in chaos. The virus was spreading. And Earth's defenders, though defeated, had fought with such ferocity that his own troops were shaken. We can still destroy the planet, his admiral said. At what cost? We have lost 300 ships to a force 1/10 our size. If we proceed, we must send troops down to hunt survivors. How many more will we lose? Does it matter? We must make the example. The Emperor looked at the tactical display, looked at the casualty reports, looked at the intelligence showing that 12 other species were watching this battle, deciding whether to rebel, and he realized something. Krevnar had been right. Humans could not be conquered. Not completely. Not with acceptable losses. Contact Earth, he said quietly. Emperor? Contact Earth, open negotiations. We will discuss terms. In his cell, Krevnar heard the news and smiled. The Warlord who had once conquered 60 worlds had saved one more. By learning when not to fight. 8 months. 8 months since Earth fell and the galaxy had changed forever. Emperor Draxthar sat across from Quan Mirai, the newly elected leader of Free Earth. Between them was a treaty neither side had expected to sign. Earth will have independence, Draxthar said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Your people will have seats on the Galactic Council. All prisoners will be returned. Reparations will be paid. Miri did not smile. She had lost too much to smile. And what does the Dominion receive? Peace. Your species will cease all attacks on Dominion vessels and colonies. You will not aid other rebellions. You will not spread your tactics to other conquered species. We cannot control what other species choose to do. But you will not actively encourage them. Mirai considered this. Around the negotiating table sat other human leaders. Shin Hana, scarred from 100 battles. Admiral Lim Junho, who had commanded humanity's makeshift fleet. Lee Minho, who had somehow kept diplomatic channels open through the entire war. And Professor Kang Doyen, the man who had taught a warlord about human warfare. "We accept," Mirai finally said. The treaty was signed. The war was over. Humanity had won, sort of. They had not defeated the Dominion. They had not destroyed its fleet. They had not conquered anything. But they had survived. And in surviving, they had earned something more valuable than victory: respect. Back on Earth, the reconstruction began. Cities were rebuilt. The dead were mourned. Millions had died in the war. Billions more had suffered under occupation. But they were free, and they remembered. Every city built a monument. Every school taught the history. Every child learned the names of those who fought. This was not a war to forget. This was a war to study, to learn from, to ensure it never happened again. Or if it did, to ensure humanity was ready. In a small apartment in Seoul, Doyen wrote the final chapter of his history. He had documented everything. The conquest, the resistance, the battles, the negotiations. Now he wrote about what came after. Humanity learned 3 lessons, he typed. First, that freedom must be defended. Second, that even the weakest can resist if they refuse to quit. Third, that knowledge is the greatest weapon. We won not because we were stronger. We won because we learned faster. Hyerin visited him that evening. She walked with a slight limp now, injury from the final battle, but she was alive. Krevnar has been released, she told him. Doyen looked up. The council freed him? Not exactly. They were going to execute him. But 12 species petitioned for his release. They said he showed mercy when the Dominion showed none, that he learned when others refused to. Where will he go? Here, to Earth. He asked for asylum. Doyen considered this. The warlord who conquered Earth, seeking protection on the planet he invaded. It was strange, but also fitting. Tell him he is welcome. I have questions for him. Krevnar arrived 3 days later. Without his armor, without his weapons, he looked smaller. Still massive by human standards, but not the unstoppable conqueror he had once been. They met in a library, surrounded by books, human books, military histories. I read your final chapter, Krevnar said, sitting carefully in a reinforced chair. You wrote that I learned, but I think I learned too late. You learned enough, Doyen replied. You saved thousands of prisoners. You helped prevent the extinction. That matters. I still invaded your world. I still killed your people. Yes, you did, and we will never forget that. But we also will not forget that you changed, that you listened, that you learned. The warlord looked around at the books. I have been thinking about something you said, about how every conqueror ends up in human history books, about how we all fail, and I realize now that I am in those books, but not as I expected. I am not written as the unbreakable. I am written as the one who learned too late. The cautionary tale. Doyen nodded. That is true. But you are also written as the one who tried, who changed. That is rare among conquerors. Krevnar was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, May I teach? Teach what? Human military history. I spent months reading your books. I understand your tactics now. I could teach others, help them learn without making my mistakes. Doyen smiled. That would be interesting. A Dominion warlord teaching humans about human warfare. I am not Dominion anymore. They stripped my rank, dissolved my status. I am just Krevnar now. Just Krevnar, Doyen repeated. Very well. I will speak to the university. We will see if they accept you. They did, reluctantly at first. But when Krevnar's first lecture was announced, the hall was packed. Humans came to see the alien who had conquered them, who had studied their history, who had learned. He stood before them, this massive creature who had once led armies. I am Krevnar, he began. I conquered 60 worlds for the Dominion. Earth was supposed to be 61. It was not, and the reason it was not is because I did not understand what I was fighting. He held up a book, Military History of World War II. I read this book when I first conquered your planet. I mocked it. I thought your species was barbaric, chaotic. I thought you wasted your potential fighting yourselves. I was wrong. He put the book down. You fight yourselves because you learn from fighting. Every war teaches you. Every defeat makes you better. By the time I understood this, it was too late. Your people had already begun to resist, and they used every tactic, every strategy, every lesson from 10,000 years of warfare against us. He paused, looking out at the crowd. I am here to teach you what I learned. Not tactics, Not strategies, but lessons. The lesson that knowledge is power. The lesson that studying your enemy is crucial. The lesson that underestimating your opponent is fatal. A student raised her hand. Do you regret invading Earth? Krevnar thought about this. I regret the deaths. I regret the suffering. But I cannot regret what I learned. Because what I learned here may save lives in the future. If I can teach others, if I can show them that conquest has cost that cannot be calculated, then perhaps some good comes from the evil I did. Another hand. Do you think the Dominion will attack Earth again? No, because they learned too. They learned that humanity is too expensive to conquer, that your resistance inspires others, that crushing you requires resources they cannot spare. You won not by defeating them. You won by making victory too costly. The lecture continued for 2 hours. When it ended, the students stood and applauded, not because they forgave him, but because he had earned something rare, the right to be heard. Across the galaxy, the ripples of humanity's resistance spread. Species that had been conquered for centuries began to whisper, began to plan, began to remember that they too had histories of warfare. The Dominion felt its grip weakening, not through military defeat, but through inspired resistance. Humanity had not just won their own freedom. They had shown others that freedom was possible. In the Dominion capital, what remained of the council convened. They discussed the human problem, how to contain their influence, how to prevent their ideas from spreading. But it was too late. The cat was out of the bag. The secret was revealed. Conquered species could resist, could fight back, could win. Admiral Lim Junho built humanity's new fleet, not for conquest, not for revenge, for defense. Ships designed using lessons from the war, fast, maneuverable, equipped with every dirty trick humanity had invented. We will never be conquered again, Junho told his crews, but neither will we become conquerors. We will defend. We will help those who ask, but we will not become what we fought against. It was a hard line to walk, but humans had always been good at impossible tasks. Yoon Seok, now 20 years old, led the technological revolution. He reverse-engineered Dominion technology and improved it, created weapons that made Earth's defense unbreakable, shared designs with allied species. Knowledge must be shared, he said. That is how we survive, together. Na Sung-min helped the freed prisoners rebuild their lives. The trauma of occupation was deep. But humans were resilient. They healed. They adapted. They moved forward. We remember the past, she told her patients. But we do not live in it. We survived, now we thrive. 5 years later, the Galactic Academy was founded, a place where all species could learn, could study, could share knowledge. The first required course was human military history. Krevnar still taught it, but now he had help. Doyen taught alongside him. Together they showed students from 100 species what humanity had learned. War is not about strength, Krevnar would say. War is about will, Doyen would continue. The side that refuses to quit, even in defeat, is the side that cannot be truly conquered. Their students came from everywhere. Former Dominion species seeking to understand resistance, neutral species wanting to avoid conflict, even some Dominion citizens questioning their empire's methods. The lectures became famous across the galaxy. The Warlord and the Professor. The Conqueror who learned. The Teacher who resisted. 10 years after the war, a monument was unveiled on Earth. It listed every name, every human who died fighting, every city destroyed, every life lost. At the dedication ceremony, Mireille spoke. We remember them, not just as victims, but as warriors. They fought when fighting seemed hopeless. They resisted when resistance seemed futile. They died so that we could be free, and because of them we are. She gestured to the names carved in stone. Thousands of names, millions of names. These are our heroes, and they will be remembered as long as humanity exists. In the crowd, Krevnar stood silently. He had requested to attend. Many had objected, but Mireille had allowed it. You are part of this history, she had told him. Your name will be written here too, not on the monument, but in the books. As the enemy who learned, that is your legacy. Krevnar accepted this. 20 years later, the Dominion fell, not through military conquest, but through peaceful dissolution. Too many species had learned from humanity. Too many had resisted. Too many had demanded freedom. The empire that had lasted 1,000 years ended not with a bang, but with a signature, a treaty dissolving central authority, granting independence to all member species. Earth had not fired a single shot in this final change. They had not needed to. Their example was enough. In his final lecture before retirement, Krevnar spoke to a packed hall. When I conquered Earth, I thought I was creating history. I thought my name would be remembered as a great warlord. I was right. My name is remembered, but not how I expected. He smiled, something he had learned from humans. Across the galaxy, when species speak of Earth's resistance, they speak my name. Not with respect, not with fear, but as a warning. They say, even Krevnar the Unbreakable learned. Even he changed. If he could learn, anyone can. He paused. I am not proud of what I did, but I am proud of what I learned. And if my shame helps others learn faster, then perhaps my life has meaning. The student stood, applauded, not because he had been a great warrior, but because he had become something better. A teacher. Doyen watched from the side of the stage. His friend, his former enemy, his colleague. After the lecture, they walked through the university gardens. Do you think humanity will remain peaceful? Krevnar asked. No, Doyen said honestly. We are still human. We will still fight. But maybe we will fight smarter now. Maybe we will remember the costs. And if another empire comes, another conqueror? Doyen smiled. Then they will learn what you learned. That humanity writes down every lesson. That we teach our children to resist. That we never ever forget. They walked in silence for a while. Then Krevnar said something he had never said before. Thank you. For what? For teaching me. For showing me that strength is not just in weapons. That wisdom is its own power. That learning is more valuable than conquering. Doyen stopped walking. You learned that yourself. I just gave you the books. The books were enough. They reached the library, the building where they had first met after Krevnar's asylum, where thousands of books lined the walls, human books, alien books, knowledge from across the galaxy. This is humanity's greatest weapon, Krevnar said, gesturing at the library. Not your ships, not your tactics, this your determination to write everything down, to learn, to remember, to teach. Yes, Doyen agreed. This is our weapon, and it can never be taken from us. Years later, after both Doyen and Krevnar had passed, their students continued teaching. The academy grew, the lessons spread, and across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages, a new story was told. The story of the species that would not quit. The story of the conqueror who learned. The story of the war that changed everything. They called it many things. The Earth resistance. The human war, the great learning. But it always ended the same way, with a simple truth. Never underestimate a species that writes down its failures. Never mock their history books, because those books are not just records of the past. They are weapons for the future. And humanity's greatest weapon was never their strength. It was their memory. In the Galactic Academy, above the entrance to the Human Military History Department, a plaque was mounted. It read, "Here we learn from those who refused to quit, who fought when fighting seemed hopeless, who taught their enemies about strength through their refusal to break. Remember their names, honor their sacrifice, learn their lessons, because the greatest tribute to the fallen is to ensure their struggles were not in vain." Below it, in smaller text, dedicated to Professor Kang Doyen and Warlord Krevnar. The teacher and the student. May we all learn as well as they learned. And so the story ended, not with conquest, not with defeat, but with understanding. Humanity had survived, had thrived, had earned their place among the stars. Not through strength, but through the simple refusal to be forgotten. Their history books had saved them, and now their history books would teach the galaxy. The Warlord had mocked those books once, had called them primitive, barbaric, evidence of humanity's chaos. He learned different, and his name, like he feared, was written in those history books, not as a conqueror, but as a teacher. And across the galaxy, when species spoke of resistance, of learning, of change, they spoke his name, not in hatred, but in hope. Because if Krevnar the Unbreakable could learn, then anyone could. And that was the greatest lesson of all.